Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you today. So let's get started with a quick introduction of yourself and your company, MoveItPro.
Sure. So my name's Jason Bergenske. I never really grew up wanting to be in the software business necessarily. Kind of going back. I mean, my full short story, I guess we'll call it. MoveItPro is a software as a service built specifically for the moving and storage industry. So the people that are coming to your homes, and when you buy a new house and they're moving all your furniture from one old house to the new house, those are our customers. And our product handles almost everything A to Z that would be encompassed of running a moving company. Everything from their dispatching, their payroll, their GPS tracking, their text messaging, their phone integration, their just absolutely everything. Their estimating, billing, everything. And it kind of started with, my grandparents started a moving company back in the 60s, obviously long prior to me being alive. And then my father was in it. And then I took over it, in 2010, 2011, in that range, and said there had to be a better way. This was a moving company in Florida that was doing, $1 million a year at that time, back in the mid 2000s, 2010 or so. I don't know, $1.5 million, $2 million, something like that. And it was a very profitable company for a small business, family business, but it just, everything we did was pen and paper, and it drove me nuts, being more on the techie savvy side. When I was in school, got my Cisco certifications and Microsoft certifications. I really enjoyed that aspect of computers and being on the technical side. And so that's when kind of MoveItPro was born, which, started off as an internal tool only for J&J Metro, which was the moving company we owned at the time. I self-funded it, thought stupidly that for a little bit of money, I would be able to hire a developer and get something built, right? And I say a little bit of money. I think at the time was 25 to 50 grand. I thought I could do something, which as time went on, obviously I had 100,000 or so in it, and still didn't have a usable product at all. And so had decided at that time that I was going to go all in, and over the next couple years, put another, $500,000 into it. Started selling in 2016. Realized if I was going all in, I needed to start selling it as a product, obviously to recoup money. This moving company was only doing a couple million a year. So to spend $600,000 on a software doesn't make sense, right? And MoveItPro kind of took off. 2016 was our first customer. From 2016 up until last month, actually, we just hit $100 million in sales. We're at about a $24 million a year right now in annual recurring revenue. And we're continuing to grow despite, actually right now for our industry, the moving industry is actually struggling right now with the high interest rates. The moving industry is actually struggling. But we've continued to be able to keep our market share, which is really big. So sorry, that's kind of a very short small thing, but I'm sure you'll have some questions in there and we can kind of go from that.
Yeah, well, sir, I would love to circle back to the founding story.
Sure.
My next question was going to be about the metrics. So you mentioned 100 million since you've started in 2016. You're at
Correct.
about 24 million ARR right now.
Correct.
And how many employees work at the company?
Yeah. So we're total about 55 employees total. Some of those are overseas. We have, and they're full-time employees. We treat them just like employees over there. They're, not freelance or part-time. We've got about 20 to 23, something like that, over in the Philippines. And then we've got our development team is actually in India, which we have 12 full-time developers. I wasn't counting developers as employees. And then we've got about 20 here in our office in Longwood, Florida. But yeah.
Interesting. You guys are a global team. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I'm sure there's great developers in the Philippines also, but we ended up, I really lucked out. Like I said, when we first started this, I didn't have $10 million to throw into a product. I ended up started off with going on Upwork, and found a few different developers that didn't really work out good. And then ended up finding a husband and wife team, which is since, they run their company still, but they've got 11 developers in addition to them working on our product now. So,
Awesome. Yeah. So I'd love to dive into that story and how the product first got built. So when you self-funded the product through the profits of your other business, did you ever think of raising money to build this product, or was that not something that crossed your mind?
yeah. So yeah, it definitely crossed my mind some, but I'm a very, so I've had other businesses in the past. I used to own a production studio prior to coming into the moving business. And I've always been very strongly feel about not having partners. Having partners is a very hard thing in any business. And when you start bringing outside money, you have partners, whether you want to call them that or not. You got partners. You got people breathing down your neck who are telling you where to spend the money and how to spend it. So it's something that while was hard, and you have to remember, we started building in around 2011, and we didn't get our first customer until 2016. That's 5 years. That's a very, very long time to invest a lot of self-made money to build a product, right? And we could have done that in a year had I taken outside money. But I'll be honest, bootstrapping it was, in my opinion, was the best thing we could have done. We have some competitors out there. OnQ is one of our competitors. Up until about 6 months ago, had taken on about $20 million of venture capital, and they actually folded up, fired their employees the day that they closed, told all their customers that they were shutting servers off. They ran out of money, is what happened, and they couldn't get more money. And that could have been us, because same thing, like I said, the moving industry right now is actually struggling some, with the housing market. Obviously, you're from Toronto, and but in the States here, it may be similar in Canada. We do have customers there as well, but America really seems to be, the housing market sucks. With the interest rate so high, and with the interest rates people had during COVID, which was like 2.9%, those people don't want to sell their houses with interest rates now that are at 8%, right? So a lot of these moving companies are struggling, and they're having a hard time either paying their bills or they're going out of business. And so had we had a bunch of venture capitalists that were breathing down our neck, I think that would have really hurt us, rather than us being able to, like in that particular instance, we picked up, I don't know, half of that company overnight in customers, and we didn't even pay for it. I mean, we started marketing to them, and those customers were struggling. I mean, they were really scared. I mean, you think our product, and that particular product, OnQ, it ran everything to do with their business. It's where they knew where their trucks were leaving to go in the morning, and whose houses they're supposed to show up, the people's credit cards of who they're supposed to charge that day, like all that stuff, and they shut it off with zero notice, like same day notice. And so those people were freaking out. And so we were able to capture a lot of those. But I don't have any regrets not doing venture capital in the beginning. A few of our competitors definitely did. Smart Moving did one for $41.5 million a couple years ago. I don't know. A lot of these guys I see that take on big money, I see them do really good for the first couple of years when they have all that money, and then when that money runs out, they're used to spending all that money. And they got to get their annual recurring revenue up, or their monthly recurring revenue up, to be able to spend that kind of money.
Mm-hmm. So there's a few interesting things there. One, it seems like you were very well positioned to build a business like this, since you were already running a moving company,
Sure.
and that had been generations in your family. So
Yep.
all of that inherent knowledge about how things work would obviously lead very well to building a software that would run every part of a moving company. Then you mentioned earlier you've hired a lot of overseas
Mm-hmm.
help on your team, which I'm sure has helped you save costs as well. Before we
Sure.
dive into that, I want to ask you one question about the ownership. Some of the things that software companies might do is they'll bootstrap for a bit, they'll reach a certain ARR, and then they'll kind of see the path forward to, maybe they're at 10 million ARR and they see a path to 50 or 100. And in order to get that step, they choose to then take on VC money to kind of push them forward. Is that something you've considered doing, or are you still the sole owner of the business?
Yeah, I'm still the sole owner. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I think I enjoy what we're doing still. I enjoy what I'm doing, and to kind of go back on, when I first started this podcast, when we were first talking, I had mentioned that, when I was in school, I got my Microsoft certifications and Cisco certifications. Originally, I thought I wanted to be a network engineer. And in reality, I loved that industry, but I knew I could never work for someone. That's a fact. I knew I could never work for someone. And so that's a big part of why I wouldn't do it. At some point, I will sell MoveItPro. I'll tell you, Full Steam is a company that's been on my tail trying to buy us for several years. They're paying for me and my CFO next month to go to the Masters. They're paying for everything. For the golf Masters. I mean, I don't know. They're probably spending 15, 20 grand for us to go so that they can sit and meet with us and talk to us. And, they're dating us, right? They're trying to buy us. That would be the only way probably I would exit. I have a lot of friends that are in the SaaS business, and when they take on that venture capital money, the venture capital money comes with a lot of other strings attached to it too. They want to they want to bring people into the business. They're going to try and change things. They're going to usually try and do a lot of stuff while they want to keep you as CEO, but now you have a boss. And so, yes, that may hold us back some. Are we going to get as big as Entercom? Absolutely not. Are we going to grow to that thing? But I'll be honest, we're pretty comfortable. We've been able to build a pretty big business. I maybe work 5 hours a week now. I've been able to buy multiple homes throughout the country and a yacht and be able to live pretty good, right? And I think that's been a big part of being able to continue to stay your own boss and build the product we want to, and be able to have that true, like the insights from us running a moving company, and we're the ones building the product. And that's our biggest thing that we compete against is, all of our competitors are software companies that were software companies, and they saw that the moving industry could use software. So then they built a software, right? But a lot of the ways they built stuff was, while it looks beautiful and may work for certain industries, it wasn't completely thought out by someone that has run a moving company, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's kind of like hiring a software engineer to design an accounting software, but you don't have an accountant that's going to be looking over it and helping them, showing them, hey, this is what we need to do it, right? And so that's been a big part of, why we've been able to grow, I think, so substantially, and pick up as much market share as we've been able to pick up.
Yeah, 100%. I was listening to this podcast the other day, and it was talking about the perspective of Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. And they were talking about going deep into something and understanding the extremes, because that's where all the gains are. And that's what I see with what you're saying when it comes to understanding the moving business and what I've mentioned previously. It's interesting how, even though you did have a technical background, actually, like you were familiar with computers, you wanted to become a network engineer, but having worked in the moving space, I can, as a software guy who's explored multiple projects and industries and tried to build it, you kind of realize all the things you don't know unless you have that direct knowledge there. I want to take a step back to one of the things you mentioned. You said you're working 5 hours a week now on MoveItPro. So is your time dedicated to other projects, or what's going on there?
Yeah, mostly just family time, man. Really being able, I just had a newborn 9 months ago. Like I mentioned, we bought a beautiful big place up on top of a mountain in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Spent a bunch of time up there. Just really being able to enjoy life, and I talk about that, which is a cliche. Like some people think, oh, that's all you do. But the reality is that first 7-8 years of building this company was no relationships with anyone and working 80 hours a week. I mean, that's the reality, and it comes to a certain point, I think in anything, once you hit a certain point, other things start becoming more important in your life, and that's family and stuff like that. And you have children. But I have a great management team that's here in our office in Longwood, Florida. I've been able to really be able to keep great talent and people to continue to help the company grow, where it's more where I'm able to come in and sit in on meetings and give pointers and do executive decisions, but for the most part, not having to be in the day-to-day, how's the sales teams doing? How's the how's our support team doing? What's going on in our, chat? I don't as much have to do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So was it a conscious decision to start to develop the business in a way that you would remove yourself from the operations to where you could only spend that amount of time a week? Because I know it wouldn't go from 80 hours to
Yeah.
5
Yeah. I
overnight.
mean,
So
it's,
yeah.
yeah. So I think it's, I wouldn't say it happened by accident, but, it kind of happens by accident in the sense of you slowly delegate enough stuff. I'll kind of go back a little bit, growing up, and when I'm saying growing up, like when I was a kid, my dad worked probably 60 to 80 hours a week running that moving company, which I then took over. Right. And, a moving company is a super stressful type of career. You own a moving company, you can make really good money, but when you got a truck broke down 3 hours away on a Saturday night, and you got guys there and it's got people's furniture in it, like, and you're at dinner with your family, like you got to get up and go. Like, and so I think, and my dad's an amazing father, but there was a lot there that he was working a lot, to be able to keep this beast growing and fulfilling what it's supposed to do, which was the moving company. And I knew I didn't want that. I didn't want to have to be tied to something. Like I said, I didn't want to work for someone else. My dad and I actually, when we ran the moving company together before he retired, we were at it, we would clash, because I'm the young guy coming in. And I'm like, what? This is stupid. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we handwriting stuff and putting it in a filing cabinet? We can do this digitally, right? And in the very beginning, my dad was my biggest non-fan for MoveItPro. We talk about this often, but in the very beginning, like, he told me it was stupid. He told me this would never work. It was a waste of money. Now MoveItPro obviously does more money in a month than the moving company did in a year, right? But he now is my biggest fan, but he just didn't see the vision, right? He came from very low income when he was a kid, had built the moving company to give us a really comfortable life, but it required him to be a 100% all the time involved owner. And so I ran J&J Metro almost up until about COVID. And my dad had stepped back in some because MoveItPro was taking off. And we actually came to the conclusion we were coming to is we got to figure out what we're going to do with the moving company. My dad wanted to retire. The dream for him was always that I would continue to take it over fully and he would be 100% out, and then we would continue it, right? But when I would look at it, it's like, okay, well, I mean, even at that time, J&J compared to what MoveItPro was bringing in it wasn't even comparable. And even at that time, as a software, as a service, you can work from anywhere in the world. I could travel, I could do whatever. With a moving company, you can't do that. I mean, you're at the office at 7 a.m. every morning making sure trucks are getting out. So we made the decision together to sell the moving company. And so I think that a lot of that stuff, I kind of roundabout answered your question, but I think it's all of that stuff that then led me to, how can I build something that is going to be able to provide for me and my family and be able to provide for my family while I'm not having to be there every single day. Because for me to be able to see my first steps for my son and spend 3 weeks up in the mountains and go on our boat to, Savannah and do these things was more important to me. But I had to get there, right? You can't just do those things if you don't have the money coming in. And so that was kind of I was laser focused on that stuff. And so, and again, I worked a lot, during that time. I burned through some personal relationships. When my friends were going out partying, I wasn't. When they were buying houses, I couldn't because all my money was going to MoveItPro. Now I think I'm doing pretty good. I own, I don't know, maybe $8 or $9 million in real estate now, and other assets. That my long-term goal is to be able to leave my family and my family's family a legacy after I'm gone. And the way we're doing it already is going to happen. So
That's awesome. So you really have this mentality that came from your childhood and your previous experiences with your father and seeing other entrepreneurs in your life. and you had a vision of kind of the life you wanted to live and the company you wanted to build. And I'm sure with that underlying vision, it directed your actions towards building the business that way.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, the thing is too, and when you think about it, there's so many entrepreneurs. Obviously, I'm sure this is going up on YouTube, but we all see it, like the Gary Vee and the, Grant Cardone, and you watch these guys, which I have huge admiration for both of them. I've met Grant Cardone in person before. Our sales team's actually in their program, but it's such a diehard, work 70 hours a week mentality, and it's that's hard, man. When you're trying to have a family and build a thing, I'm okay with MoveItPro doing $50 million a year. Like, I'm okay with that. I don't need it doing $1 billion. Like, does that mean I'm going to stop there and I'm not going to do other stuff? No, I'm still doing real estate investing. I'm doing other stuff. But, at a certain point, like, I mean, I've had Rolls Royces, I've had yachts. Like, I've been able to do the things that I've wanted to do when I was a kid that were dreams, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's out the system now, and there's other priorities.
Yep.
So the last podcast I saw you on was the SaaS Club by Omar Khan. And I believe in that podcast, you guys were doing about 5 million ARR.
5 million
and that was
ARR.
about 2 years ago. So you guys have had massive growth in the last 2 years since then. Do you mind diving into what your growth strategies have been and how you guys have been able to 5x the business in the last 2 years?
Yeah. So, I mean, a big part of it. So a couple things. One is we've just been able to track all of our marketing and advertising. Probably 80% of our business comes from AdWords. Google stuff. Customer goes in, types in software service for moving companies or moving software. And we had really dialed in to really knowing where we were getting that money from. Like, we weren't just spending money on moving software, right? We were actually dialing into it that, all right, if we spend $1,000 on keywords for moving software, it's going to get us, 40 grand a year in ARR. Okay, so let's throw $100,000 at it. And so that's kind of been a big part of it. Several million of ARR we picked up was from one of our competitors going out of business, which is almost unbelievable in the sense of, and I said this like on a post and I tagged that CEO, because her videos on TikTok of her firing everyone, all like 70 of her employees. It's terrible. Anyways, I said, why didn't you call me? I would have paid you for your customers. Like, I would have paid a couple $1 million and figured out and found the money to be able to acquire your organization and bring it over to ours. The reality is we didn't even have to pay for it because we probably picked up, 80% of our customers. The other 20 probably went somewhere else. And then the third part of it, which we haven't talked about, is we opened up a call center. So this is outside of the SaaS realm, but it brings in, we wouldn't be able to do it without our product. So we opened up a call center specifically for moving companies. They're using MoveItPro. And so what this is we've got hundreds of moving companies throughout the United States, Canada, and Australia that the moving companies, the guys are rough and out on trucks and stuff. They don't want to have to deal with the sales side, right? So if you go on Google and you look up ABC Movers, when you dial that phone number for ABC Movers, it comes to our call center, either in our office here or one of the Filipinos picks up. Mind you, I'm going to say too, a lot of people have a thing against Filipinos. Filipinos are absolutely amazing. You got to find ones that have really good English. Most of the ones that we get, they sound like almost like they maybe have a Spanish accent or something like that. You need to be able to understand them. No one wants to call like when you're calling Dell and you thank you for calling. Like, it's not that, right? But their work ethic is unbelievable. And so that's been a big part of it. And that was during COVID, we switched a lot of our employees to overseas, and they've done a significant amount better of selling, providing better customer service, and all that stuff. So back to the call portion is, if someone calls and they hit our call center, we talk to the customer, we book the move, we charge that moving company a percentage. So we built all of that within MoveItPro. So the call actually comes into MoveItPro, calls are recorded into MoveItPro, all of our billing for it's automated through MoveItPro. And that's picked up several $1 million of revenue just from booking moves for other moving companies throughout the country. So all of that's included in our total of $23 or so million last year.
And when you guys decided to build out that arm of the business, were you selling to existing MoveItPro customers or?
Yeah, so that's how it started. Yeah, because it was easy because we had MoveItPro customers and we said, hey, we have a call center now that's starting, and we can help book your moves for you. We charge between 12 and 15% of whatever the move is, depending on how many calls we do for you. And so we started picking up a cluster of those, and then we started advertising directly for that too, because there are a lot of moving companies that just look for instance, like a answering service or something like that for after hours. Our call center is open pretty long. We're open, so it's Eastern Standard Time, but 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. Eastern Standard, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sundays 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So most moving companies close at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, they're closed Saturday, Sunday. So we're able to book a lot of moves for these moving companies that otherwise would be going to voicemail, which means they'd probably be calling the next mover on the list, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I want to dive into, so you guys are leveraging a lot of workers in the Philippines. You mentioned your dev team was in India. How do you go about finding talent in these places?
Yeah. So India, we've been there a very, very long time. So that one is not hard for us. The original husband and wife that we've been using, that has been since 2011, 2012, right in that time, 2011 really.
Yeah.
And so they manage all of, the husband and wife work on the project, and then they have employees in their facility now that are full-time on our project. So we don't have to worry about any hiring there. Now the Filipinos, that originally started, there's a Filipino website you can go to. It's onlinejobs.ph. I have zero affiliation with it, but I don't know. It's like $75 or something. It's like Indeed on steroids, but for Filipinos, pretty much. And you post your ad on there. Have you heard of it before? Or no?
No, I'm laughing because I was thinking of a story. I used to hang out with a lot of Filipinos back home.
Yeah.
And they're we would play basketball. And what I loved about playing basketball with them is they bring the whole family.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody would come, all the sisters would be there, and they'd bring food. So we'd always be eating in between basketball games, and I get invited to the parties, and I'd be the only Canadian in the party.
That's funny.
And you're like, when you're in those situations, you're a little celebrity because everyone's like, try this food, try that, try this drink.
Yeah, I mean,
lots of good times.
So we did do interviews for people in India for doing calls and support and stuff, but and I have nothing against the Indian culture. Our developers are there. But for support aspect and phone conversation, speaking to customers and customer service, the Philippine culture was much better for us.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, there's some differences without a doubt. I mean, it's a different culture. It's another country. But I think in my experience from what we've done, the Filipino culture is probably the closest to the American culture that there is as far as another country. And the Filipinos, by a big part, love Americans. They love America. They love America. They all want to come to America. Versus if you hired someone maybe in another third world country, not India, but another third world country, like they hate Americans. You know what I mean? Like the Filipinos actually really like the Americans, and which is a big reason. That's why like cruise ships use them all the time, and that's why these other big organizations use them. And so back to the hiring of them. So it first started, and this was a couple years ago. We did a job posting on there just for doing call center reps. And we didn't know how it was going to go. In fact, my call center manager, which is here in our office here in Longwood, was 100% against it. He's like, I don't want to hire overseas. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not really thrilled about sending money overseas either. But it was like during COVID or right after COVID, and people were still getting free money from the government here in the States. Normal employees didn't want to work. If they did want to work, they wanted to work from home anyway, but they wanted to make big money, like it just was, it was harder and harder to get people after COVID for us anyway. I think most people had the same experience. Most people I talked to had the same experience, but that was our experience. So we went online, we did that. And I think we hired like 5 Like we posted the ad and we probably had 100 applicants, right? And like it's pretty inexpensive. Like you're looking over in the Philippines, like $5-6 an hour, $8 an hour. You're getting like that's equivalent to someone here in the States making like 150 grand a year. Like it's the money is hugely different. The average Filipino is making like $1.50 an hour if they work in the Philippines. So we hired a batch of 5 and we were pretty rigorous on them. I would say we probably cut 4 of those because we knew that we had to provide, if we were going to do this, we had to provide such an exceptional service from them with our customers or else it would kill us. Meaning like if we've all had the experience probably where we've called customer support of our cell phone or Dell or one of those and you're like almost pissed off because you can't understand the person or they can't understand you. Like that's frustrating. Like that's not what we do, you know? And so we would, it's funny, my call center manager, he's from Hungary. He's here in the States. He's grown up here in the States. He's amazing English, but he's funny because a lot of the Filipinos will, if they're reading something, they'll be very good. Conversation sounds really good. But if you have a conversation with them, they struggle because they have to think. You know what I mean? So he learned that. And so that started being part of his interview process when he would interview a Filipino is we're just going to have a conversation like normal conversation. What did you do this weekend? And it's funny, like things like that. And you'd realize which ones know English and which ones can just read it because there's a difference. And it goes with all cultures, right? But like if you're Spanish and you think Spanish, every time you speak English, you have to translate it in your mind, right? And if you're not super good at it, it's slow to respond. And so that's one of the tests we put them through. And so we just became very, we didn't just let people join our team that were not capable of providing either the same quality service that we are already providing to our customers with Americans or better. And I'll tell you, like when you look at our sales data from the Filipinos versus our Americans, like the Filipinos almost 2-to-1 beat our Americans, which I don't understand it other than it's just so much more money for them that they just work so much harder. I don't know the answer to it other than that, but and so hiring future ones is a piece of cake now. We literally go to our existing team. Obviously we're all in Slack. We have Slack channels for each department. When we hire new Filipinos, we just, tell our current ones, hey, we're looking for this position and we'll have 20 applicants pretty quickly. And we're firm with them. We tell them like, look, if you refer someone, like, what we look for. So it's going to fall back on you. And then during training and stuff, I mean, the Filipinos usually they train each other. I mean, they're very, very, very good. So.
I really like how it's so funny when you were talking about the language thing. So I'm fluent in Spanish. I've been learning for the last 5 years. Yep. And I obviously spend a lot of time in Latin America. And learning a new language, for example, I was taking a scuba diving course just about 2 years ago.
Yep.
And the instructor only spoke Spanish. And I had good Spanish at the time. It's better now, but I had good Spanish. But talking about a subject I had never spoken about before in another language, you just don't know the words.
Yeah. And you're trying to translate it in your head and you're trying to and that was our biggest thing with the Filipinos. Because some of the Filipinos, when they're talking to their family and stuff, they're not speaking English, but most of them learn English over there, but they learn it in school where they're reading it and writing it. That's completely different than, hey, how are you doing? Like, how's your family? What did you do this weekend? And he'll ask, what was the last movie you watched? And they got to answer, well, what did you like it? And you'll see it. The ones that have bad English, you'll see it in their head and they can't do it. And I'm not being mean about it, but for it to work for our company, we have to be so strict on the language because if we have a situation where our customers are getting frustrated because of the language, then we failed them and that costs us business. And that's not the goal. Like the goal was not to hurt our customers. It was actually to better them and be able to have longer business hours and be able to do all of those things. So.
I think that's a very important note to make clear for anybody listening to this and then begins to think about hiring overseas to have that as part of their process. I
Yep.
want to take a step back for a second and talk about the ad spend. So you mentioned that 80% of your business comes from Google Ads, correct?
Correct.
And you guys have been scaling that up over the last, I guess once you realized that this was a very good marketing channel for you, you guys have been able to scale that up.
Yep.
Have you found the growth has been linear as you've been spending more money on Google Ads, or has there been things you've had to change as
Yeah.
the ad spend has went up?
So we definitely have had to change stuff. I mean, I think ads is something that you're constantly tweaking. You know, so I think we're definitely changing stuff there. For the most part now, I think we're at our what I would call our sweet spot. You know, we've done a lot of different things. So like, you know, you as you're obviously using AdWords, so you're showing, you know, you're bidding against other competitors or other people that are searching for our keywords. So um, we've realized sometimes it's okay for us to be second and not first. You know, we might pay for a keyword to be second, we might be $22, but if we're first, we're $50, right? Sometimes it's okay for us to be second. We don't always have to be first on certain things, but I think for the most part now we've kind of dialed it in pretty good. We do get some leads like from Capterra, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Like obviously we advertise with them. We do a bunch of our own podcast stuff. We do events like this. End of this month, I rented a 30,000 square foot mansion, which is huge, like 30,000 square feet, in Florida, down by Disney. And we sell tickets to it to movers to come to this event. And we host it and we bring sponsors in, and we'll have 50 people there in that mansion. It's the 27th through 29th or something of this month, or 30th. But at those events too, we'll pick up customers. And obviously we do trade shows and we do those things, but the majority is AdWords, man. And which part of the AdWords too, you have to give credit where credit's due. Like some of the AdWords is because we've done other stuff, right? So like someone might see us at a convention and they go to Google and they type in MoveItPro. And so we pop up first because our competitor is also bidding for MoveItPro because they're nice guys. And so, so a customer clicks on our AdWord. Well, I just technically that on our data sheet that shows it came from AdWords, which in reality, we probably got it from another organic way. They just happened to go to Google and type in our direct name.
So going forward for the next year, do you have any specific new initiatives that you guys are looking to take on in order to grow the business? I know you mentioned the events that you're hosting, the trade shows you're going to, maybe scaling up more AdWords spend. Is there any new initiatives you're doing, or are you just looking to do more of what you're currently doing and what you've just mentioned?
Yeah, for the most part, it's more of just what we're currently doing. I mean, we're constantly doing new integrations with other platforms and stuff. Like we're doing one now with a company called LiveSwitch, which is it'll make it for the ability for a mover when they're doing an estimate. Say I'm coming to move you, or you're calling in to get an estimate. I can send you a text message with a link. You just click on it, and we can do a live video call for you to show me what you're moving, but you don't have to download anything on your phone. It doesn't go through Zoom, it's browser based. So we're constantly adding integrations like that. Like that's one integration we're doing. But for the most part, just doing more of what we're doing. You know, we love doing events. We've really realized events are very much needed in our industry. There was a event company or association that was in business for 100 years. It was called AMSA, American Moving and Storage Association, and they actually folded during COVID. We were actually supposed to have, we were one of their prime sponsors. The month of COVID, they were supposed to have one in like March 20th or whatever it was. And I think the state shut us down on like March 16th. So they ended up folding because they had already spent all the money, which was sad to see them go out of business. But that was the big show that everyone went to. And that was a huge convention that was all over the world, really. They'd go to Hawaii, they'd go to Texas, they'd go to California. This particular one was supposed to be in Orlando, where they went every year and all the movers would gather. I don't know, maybe 15, 20,000 movers would go to it. And so for a year or two, no one had anywhere to go. There was no other real big associations. And so we started doing these events. I don't see the events necessarily getting bigger. I could see us doing more. I really do enjoy doing the mansion type versus like a huge convention. The mansion's cool, man. I mean, 30,000 square foot house. I mean, you're indoor basketball courts, indoor bowling alley, 4 stories, rooftop swimming pool. I mean, it's like, so to be able to go there, and most of the guys that are coming to it are big moving companies. I mean, these are guys that are doing $20-30 million a year moving companies.
Yeah.
So they're my kind of people to hang out with, and we all bounce ideas off each other, and they're able to bounce ideas off each other. And I think that's what makes it really neat to be able to do events like that and build relationships, which I think is super important for any business as you're growing.
So Jason, as we start to wind down here, I want to ask you a few more questions. The first one is, when you rent out the mansion, do you have an itinerary for the days, or
Oh, yeah.
what's the vibe like?
Yeah. So for this particular event, so this is only the second year we've done it. So this particular house, the reason we choose it is it has a theater that seats 50 people in it. So big movie theater, 300-inch screen, and it's multiple stories. So we do classroom style in there 2 of the 4 days, where we bring in speakers from the industry. These big guys that are in the industry. We bring in some sponsors. And so from like 8 a.m. until 3 or 4 p.m., we do classroom style in there where, people can ask them questions. Similar stuff we're talking about here. Where are you spending your marketing at? What are you doing to grow the business? What do you do when this happens? And that creates a ton of value. And then we have itinerary we have movie night in there. We have everyone go bowling at this time. It's kind of like, have you ever been on a cruise?
I have
Cruise
not.
ship? Okay. Well, I love cruises. So when you get on a cruise ship, you get an itinerary. Now it used to be printed. Now it's on a phone. But it has all 5,000 things that are happening over the next week. And you can choose and pick what you want to do when you want to do it. So similar to that. So it'll have what time dinner's at. And so you just got to show up where dinner is at this time, and it'll be located in this room on this floor, whatever, right? Movies at this time, float around the floating river pool or water slides this time. So it's a neat thing. And so we do it, and these guys just have a blast. We include everything. So they come, obviously they pay to come, but their food's included, their alcohol's included. So that makes them have quite a bit of fun. We have masseuses that come. So some of them bring their wives and stuff. So we have masseuses that come, and like this, of course, it's 30,000 square foot mansion. Of course, it has a full salon and massage parlor and stuff in it. So like, it's just a place for these movers that are running big, decent sized companies to be able to come and be able to network, be able to relax, be able to hang out, and figure out ways to help grow their companies.
That sounds like an absolute blast.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm actually pretty excited about it. This year. We have some really good speakers. Last year was our first year. Last year was a little bit of a struggle to sell tickets because no one really knew what it was or what we were doing. This year we sold out fast. Almost like we should have raised the prices, but we'll see how next year goes. We got a bunch of sponsors. So it'll be a good time. We'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys have fun. I want to be invited to that.
Right.
So, Jason, a few closing thoughts here. Obviously, you've scaled up the company from investing your own money almost 15 years ago now to where it's currently at. There's been a bunch of challenges that you've had to go throughout that process, I'm sure. So what has been the number one piece of advice you can give to yourself just in your entrepreneurial career and then growing a business to 24 million ARR?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is, I think there's a couple, but one is following the dream of what you want it to be. So when I first started MoveItPro, no one else had the vision that I had. If you asked pretty much anyone that I know, if they thought MoveItPro would be what it is today, no one would think that it would be, and there's a lot of opportunity for companies to fail, obviously. Probably more of them fail than succeed, especially in the SaaS business, because there's so many products being created that just never end up getting clientele or getting enough to fund it. But, I think that was my biggest thing was not giving up on it, because I was close many times. I mean, when you had, I remember literally looking at a spreadsheet and seeing I had like $200 and something thousand in it, no customers. And like, that was a lot of money to me. I mean, it's a lot of money, but like that was a lot of money to me at the time, right? Like that was like I could have halfway paid for a house, like, and I had a lot of times like that I could have given up. So I think the biggest thing was not giving up. One of the hardest things I think of growing the business has been employees. Employees has been from the beginning is always hard. I think keeping really good talent, making good enough comp plans that make sense to want to make people stay, has been something that we've had to learn how to do. Right, like I never ran a company that's doing this kind of revenue. You know, I came from a company that, you know, the guys at that time were making $12 an hour out on the truck, right? Not that we were underpaying them, but that was just what the market called for, you know? So I think that's been kind of our biggest challenge is just keeping really good people, but we're in a really good spot now. We got great people, and you know, I'm definitely happy where we're at.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. These are some of my favorite kinds of interviews where we end up going in directions that I never thought we'd go in and diving into topics that I had not had plans at the beginning of the show. So thanks a bunch for coming on. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
It's awesome. Thank you so much.